Hey, it's Darren Lee. Leonard Williams.
This is Justin Burris.
Jason McDougal here.
Doug Middleton. Darren Roberts.
So you're watching NYJF TV.
You're watching NYJF TV. So you're watching NYJF TV.
You're watching NYJF TV.
Go Jets.
Go Jets.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of NYJF TV. I'm one of your hosts, Kevin Sirkin. No Fireman Ed tonight, but we still have former Jets wideout Rob Carpenter in the house, and we're going to be discussing a whole lot of craziness coming out of Florham Park this week with the Jets quarterback competition. But before we get into that, a few quick things. If you guys aren't watching on Shindig, please go download the Shindig app. I know a lot of you are watching on Facebook, on Periscope, on Twitter. Go download Shindig, be a part of the show. We can bring you guys on at the end, ask questions. So if there's something on your mind, go download the app. Also, if you guys are going to be in the area for Saturday, Jets-Giants at MetLife Stadium. After the game, there's going to be a fight. Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, everyone's talking about it. Need a place to watch it. Annabella's House of Mozzarella. It's 2 minutes outside of MetLife Stadium. Check them out. They have some great food, great spot to watch the fight. And lastly, we are excited to announce our new partnership with FanDuel. Check out our league, FanDuel.com, promo code NYJF. We're going to have a whole lot of exciting things going on throughout the year. A chance to play with me, Ed, Rob, play with Jay, take your money. We're also going to have some prizes and some autographs to give away, so definitely get involved with that. And lastly, now we can finally get to some football. We'll start it off with Saturday before we get to the quarterbacks. Rob, what did you see out there on Saturday? Because, I mean, that was pretty ugly. Who stood out to you? What were some things that you observed out there?
Yeah, like you said, man, it was pretty ugly out there on Saturday. For the most part, didn't look like Hack was too prepared. But for the most part, again, preseason games, you don't really go into a whole lot of game planning. You might, look at a clip two here or there of the defense for the QBs. Still pretty vanilla in the second game. But, you would expect the offense to actually run their basic plays and actually be able to get those plays off against, a vanilla defense. But, it just looked like they were actually totally outmatched. Like this was a regular season game. They had no idea what was coming at them from the first team offense. For the defense, part, I still like what I see even on vanilla. They made some plays out there. The game got kind of ugly, from an offensive standpoint, kind of fast, and it stayed that way basically throughout the whole game. Hopefully, when those guys actually looked at the film, they got to see these crazy simple mistakes that they were making, and they got to get those corrected pretty fast. There wasn't a whole lot that actually fouled on the bottom side from that game, so that's one of those tapes where you just take it, you learn from it, and move on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's really no way to defend the way Hackenberg played. I mean, he did not look good. But let's also, I try to keep things in perspective. The same way we weren't going to go nuts over him going 18 of 25 his first game where he did some things to look okay. I don't think it's, fair to say, all right, now he's a bust because he had one bad half in the preseason, especially when you look at the play calling. It was second and long, third and long the entire half. The offensive line was in his lap pretty much as soon as the ball was snapped. So I really don't think he had much of a shot. I don't think McCown or Petty really would have fared much better. Certainly not adjusting the protection on that sack. I mean, that stands out because, if he does that in the regular season, he's going to get himself killed. So, I don't know how much you can really take from that, but there were some positive things that you can take away. I mean, Josh Martin, I thought he played all right. He had a sack for quarterback hurry, so he looked pretty good. Dexter McDougal continues a strong camp. I think he's probably solidified his roster spot at this point. Were there any guys that stood out positively for you?
You just mentioned one.
Second
Josh
down.
He said that as the game was going on, I actually, put that tweet out there that Josh Martin actually was making the best of his time out there, when he was there, because the pressures he got, the sacks he got, that's something actually I'm pretty sure the coaches like this guy actually put it all out there, in this game, and he's one of the guys that stood out for me. Other than that, really can't look at a whole lot from what was going on, especially when we looked at Detroit's first team. Offense down the ball kind of fast on the defense, but you can't take a whole lot from that being a shell of a first quarter for them. You really get to see the whole game if there were any adjustments made, on the fly as the game's going along. So I'm sure they look at that and look at it as far as the defense backs go and see the cross routes that were being completed on them and make those adjustments that they probably had to make in practice. So, but for the most part, it wasn't really all that stood out to me, except for Josh Martin. Definitely, he stood out for me with the piece that I made during the game.
And it's a shame that Fireman Ed's not here tonight because Lachlan Edwards actually had a nice game as well. He had some good punts out there. I know that we've said quite a bit that they need to bring in some competition at punter, but if he can finally lock that down a little bit, I mean that would be awesome because special teams is going to be huge this year with the way the offense is shaping up right now.
I think he will lock that position down and look like they trust him though, because there's not really any competition there. So basically, he must be doing exactly what they're asking him to do, if not more. But I know if Ed was here tonight, he would have a whole lot to say about the offensive line and the way that they look, because there was really not a lot of push up there. Even in the running game, Paul actually struggled, and the offensive line struggled for the whole first half. So Ed would probably be blowing a gasket right now with some of the things that he showed in the game on Saturday.
All right. Well, now is the part of the show that I'm really, really excited about because I can't wait to get into this because throughout the entire offseason, I've been told that I was wrong, that Hackenberg is a bust. He looks horrible. He's not showing anything. And I've continued to maintain he's showing some progress. He's showing little things. His footwork is better. His mechanics are better. His arm is incredibly lively. He can do things that McCown cannot do. Okay, I've been trying to maintain that throughout the preseason. And I've said I don't think Josh McCown is realistically in this quarterback competition. It wouldn't make sense for them to start a 38-year-old quarterback who has no future. He is proven. He has game film, regular season game film that proves what he is. Petty has 4 games of that. Hackenberg doesn't have any. So this week, we knew what was at stake. Giants on Saturday night. This is the dress rehearsal. This is the regular season tune-up. Whoever gets the reps in practice this week, you would figure is going to be the guy going into the regular season. And sure enough, Josh McCown has barely done anything in practice this week. Hackenberg has seen most of the work with the ones, but Petty has also seen a ton of reps. And it kind of leads you to believe that maybe Josh McCown was just never involved realistically in this quarterback competition to begin with. And it's truly up to Hackenberg or Petty to take the job on Saturday night. So, Rob, what do you think, man?
I think McCown is in the competition. It's just that I think right now, the way the preseason is actually shaping up, they're taking a very hard, extended look at Hack and Petty. If you notice through the whole all season, most of the reps that went with first team were on McCown. When training camp first started, most of the first team reps were with McCown. As training camp has gone on and the way the preseason has gone on, they're trying to get Hack in there and get him the reps that he needs with the first team. Petty's been filtered in there as well. Like you said, they have game film on Petty. They know what he's about for the most part. But they're actually trying to see if actually Hack can actually separate himself. That's actually what I think is going on. But don't count out the fact that McCown is actually the vet that's still there. He basically knows what's going on. Bowles actually even said this. He knows the system. So if they don't feel totally comfortable with what Petty and Hack have might go with this week, I wouldn't be shocked if opening weekend that McCown is actually the guy who actually starts the first game. I'm not saying that Hack won't be able to get that shot, but just simply for the fact that they probably have the confidence that McCown actually knows the system. And even though he hasn't gotten the full game reps, a lot of the game stuff that will go on through the preseason, it's all vanilla anyway for the first 2 games, especially. If he gets 0 reps this week, you know, it's a slight possibility that they're looking for Hack not to blow it. But if he does, don't be surprised if McCown actually is the guy that's there the first week, because he'll basically know how to put their team in decent positions, not to kill themselves during the season.
I just think they're opening themselves up to a ton of criticism, and rightfully so. If you try to start Josh McCown on week 1 and he hasn't had game reps in over a month, to me that would be a crazy way to be handling the situation. Not to mention the fact that, and I continue to say this because I think it's huge. Wins matter. 2-20 in regular season games, you can't erase that. He's not a good quarterback. He may be a veteran, but so is Ryan Fitzpatrick. We've been down that ship already. I don't think Jet fans want to revisit that. I think we'd much rather watch young quarterbacks getting better from week 1 to week 17 than circle the wheels with a guy like McCown.
I agree, totally. But I'll pretty much stick with what I said from the very beginning. I don't expect McCown to be the quarterback for the entire year, not at all. Regardless, one way or the other, Hackenberg or Petty is gonna play the majority of this year if one of them is healthy. Whether it's from game 3 or 4 on, if it's not the first game, I'm not expecting McCown to actually be the guy to fill out this entire season like Fitz was last year. But that being said, I think they're actually looking to see if Hackenberg right now can adjust himself to be the guy in every situation of a game. Saturday night, the game against the Giants is actually going to be telling a lot. Because we all know the third preseason game is a game where the team is actually looking to get ready for the regular season, because a lot of the guys who are actually going to start the season don't play in the 4th preseason game. So, especially quarterbacks. So if Hack goes out there and doesn't, go crazy on the negative side like he kind of did against Detroit, and by that I mean, if he doesn't go out there and just stink up the place, putting the team in bad situations, unnecessary timeouts, turnovers that could be avoided. And like you said, adjusting line, blocking situations. If he doesn't go out there and do those things, look for Petty or McCown to step up by the opening weekend.
Yeah, that is my only hope. I mean, if they truly think that Hackenberg isn't ready, that's fine. You want to be a little bit more patient with him, give him a few more weeks to learn the offense, that's fine. Then go with Petty. All right, he's been here a couple of years. I know it's still a new offense for him, but he's 11 years younger than McCown. He at least has some upside. He's got a stronger arm. He's a little bit more mobile. I'd much rather watch him for a couple of games while Hackenberg's still figuring it out. So I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions on the quarterbacks, and we're going to get to that again at some point later in the show. But for right now, aside from the quarterbacks, Rob, what is your biggest concern on this team? Because obviously the offensive line definitely stood out. The receivers, they've been struggling to hold on to the football and create separation. So what do you think is the biggest concern on this team right now, aside from the quarterbacks?
It's going to be the receivers because, it's going to be with your quarterbacks playing, you're going to have to have guys that are actually going to be able to step up and make some plays. And it seems like, from every report that I'm reading from you guys out there at practice, that the receivers are kind of struggling a little bit with drop passes. And not being able to get separation from the DBs. So that's going to be my biggest thing, along with the offensive line. Hoping the offensive line can come together fast enough where protections are good enough where the young quarterbacks aren't getting killed. Those are my 2 main concerns right now, along, of course, with the quarterback situation. But I think the defensive side of the ball is pretty much solid. Not saying that the everybody that's out there on the defensive side of the ball is set in stone, because we all know that there's still a lot of competition going with the linebackers and with the DBs. So, but in that aspect, the fact that there is still a lot of competition there means that guys are actually making plays. So nobody is actually taking the reins within anything. So there's that equal competition there. So I kind of feel good about that part. So I'm not too worried about the defense. It just really is going to be the offensive side of the ball with the receivers and the offensive line.
Yeah, I definitely think the defense is going to figure it out. But kind of like we saw with the Lions, I mean, if they're going to be on the field for 35, 40 minutes a game, I mean, they're not going to win chance. And so I think the offensive line right now, based on what I see in practice, I would put them as a bigger concern just because every single day you're talking. You look at the receivers, though, you have Hanson and Stewart, both those guys. You drafted in the third, fourth rounds. They're starting to look comfortable and show some things. Hanson's made a few spectacular catches this week. So I think there's just a little bit more upside maybe with the receivers, whereas with the O-line, if these guys don't pan out, I mean, who's really waiting unless you're getting Nick Kendall to call, which I think would make sense at this point.
That's the only good thing about the receiver core, that there is a little depth, even though it's young, and the guys are actually coming back to practice now. Excuse me, the guys that were actually injured, so they can get the work in. Well, like you just said, with the limited depth on the offensive line, one little injury or something like that, they can be struggling.
All right, so we still have a few more topics to get to, but right now we have a guest that would love to come on and ask us a question. So I'm going to have Jay go ahead and bring him in. We got Robbie Jersey who wants to ask something. So Robbie Jersey, you there?
I think Jay's bringing them on right now. He's coming in.
All right, Robbie Jersey, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, good to hear from you. What's on your mind, dude?
Everything's good. Everything's great. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to kind of ask Rob something. Now, I always was under the assumption like you kind of settle into your starters this week, and then it's like the dress rehearsal, what have you. And I understand maybe there's a lot of spots that they're still competing against. Isn't it kind of somewhat unproductive not to have the offensive line 5 set, like so they can start building chemistry, or even in a lot of other positions other than that? What is it? Is this kind of odd right now? What's going on, or this does happen in some training camps?
The only thing that's kind of odd right about this point right now is the fact that the quarterback situation is the way that it is. So with McCown actually not getting the reps that he's actually getting at this point, it's just the younger guys that are actually getting all the reps. If they're expecting anything from him, during the season, this would be the point in time right now with this week, the third week, where you try to solidify things. So that's actually why I was saying a little earlier that they're actually really, it looks like they're really trying to give Hack the spot. But the O-line, the way it is right now, whoever's actually in those spots right now with the O-line, those are the guys that you would think are going to be the guys that are starting the season, because for the most part, once the first week comes around, the guys who play the most this week are usually the guys that are in there first week. Because, like I mentioned, fourth preseason game, a lot of guys don't tend to play most of that game. Even though the offensive line, they try to give the offensive line as many reps as possible, and hopefully, in hopes that guys don't get hurt. But what you see out there this week against the Giants is probably what's going to start to see.
Okay, yeah, that's the only thing. I didn't, last year, remember when they were switching out, I think it was right tackle, I believe. It was like I just felt like I always just believed the offensive line needed time to build, chemistry. Even the offensive lines to bend together. I always felt like week 4 is when they're week 4, week 5 is when they're at their fullest. And that was just the one thing that I just felt like odd that they haven't really set themselves.
The offensive line is usually the part of the team that takes the longest to gel, especially when guys are new. A veteran offensive line, they don't need that long. You won't see veteran offensive lines playing a lot, even in the third preseason game. They'll probably get a half in, and that's it. A lot of guys will start to substitute. But, yeah, a new offensive line is probably the section of the team that takes the longest to gel, because there's just so much for those guys to learn and get cohesive with each other, because that's the solid part of the team. If one guy is down and a new guy steps in and he's not really cohesive with the rest of the unit, that throws off everything. So those guys gelling is a huge part of what this team is gonna look like.
Yeah, I got a question for Kevin, because Kevin's been in a lot of camps, most of the camp, and the running back Murphy, and something I haven't heard his name being thrown around, but it's like when Lucky got hurt, I really was thinking Hammond was doing good. Could have been special teams because he was doing a dual role with wide receiver. Because I believe you can't just have someone on the special teams to return to be on the team just for that. So you have to have a dual role, so to speak. And I noticed this past 2 weeks, Murphy has been in practice. They've been using him a lot, letting him get reps as they're in the running game. And I saw he had I think it was 8 carries on Saturday's game. And then I saw that he did kickoff returns. He was 3 for 71. He averaged 23 yards on kickoff returns. On punt returns, I think he was 2 for 10. So he averaged 5 yards on the punt returns. I just saw that he was more active in that role. And I was I don't hear too many people talking about him, but the fact that I see him more doing, running plays and special teams on both kickoff and return, I feel like he could sneak in there and get that job. And then if they would depend on Lucky at all, he can hold it down till then or keep it. What's your take on that?
Here's the thing that really surprised me with Murphy on Saturday night. Watching him get all those reps was really surprising because he had been injured for the first couple of weeks of camp. And so he had just started to get back into the swing of things in camp, and then he's out there, returning punts and kicks. Meanwhile, Ramar Morris has had a phenomenal camp, I thought. Guy's got 4.3 speed. He's a mismatch against linebackers. I mean, they cannot keep with him at all. So I thought he would be a perfect guy to try to implement into this offense somewhere. I was just really surprised that he didn't get an opportunity on Saturday night. But, perhaps that's a sign that they've already seen a little bit from Murphy, and they think he has a chance to stick.
Yeah. And then the other guy, and I guess this would be both of you guys, but mainly Rob, because he was a wide receiver. I was really puzzled about Peak's reps. I didn't even heard no injury. He only had 2 reps, and he dropped 1 ball. And it was I just thought with the situation, I think Peak's got a big wide receiver body where, it could be utilized in the red zone. And I just was surprised he's only getting two reps. And I look at it 2 ways. Either he's on the bubble, or the other thing is maybe they know they want to keep him, and they're trying to try out all these other wide receivers on the roster. I just found it odd that but I mean, Peak he's only a 7th rounder, but I think he could be utilized this year. Like I said, in the red zone. What do you guys think?
At this point, the guys that you actually see getting all the reps are the guys that actually think about playing. Because at this point in training camp, they're actually trying to put their teams together as far as units go. So with Peak dropping down, it kind of surprised me a little bit as well, as far as the amount of reps that he's been getting. But you got to think about the fact that they actually drafted 2 guys this year in the mid rounds, and those guys are actually they need to get those guys reps too. So you're going to have a sleeper pop out here and there, but for the most part, with Sharon Peak's actually production dropping down a little bit at this point, honestly, it's not a good sign for him.
Yeah, good stuff as always, Robbie, man. We definitely appreciate
you taking
the time to call in. Look forward to hearing from you again. All right, man.
Appreciate the question, Robbie.
All right, so with that, we're going to turn things over. We got a fun little game we want to play. We want to go a little rapid fire here. All right, so Jay's going to put up 5 names, and I want your quickest take on whether or not these guys are going to make the roster or if they're going to be cut. Let's start with Lorenzo Malden. Rob, what are your thoughts on his chances here?
I think he makes it. I actually do think he's making it, even though he lost it. Even though he hasn't been on the field, I actually do think he makes it, though, because for the simple fact that he had that potential there, and I think they saw the potential. Him getting a little nicked up or whatever it was, but him not being on the field, I still think that he will be one of the guys that'll be kept. I'm not saying that he's going to be in the lineup because I think he's actually lost a little bit as far as playing time go, but I think they saw the potential that he had, so I actually do think they're going to keep him.
Yeah, I probably tend to agree. I think they will bank on his 3rd round draft status, as well as the fact that there really isn't a whole lot of depth there. But if some of these young guys start playing well against the Giants, as they have for most of the camp, you never know what could happen there. So next up, Jalen Marshall. What do you think about him?
I think they're going to keep him, even though he has that suspension coming. They know he's made plays. He's been a little, off kilter a little bit in special teams play, not being able to hold on to the ball as he should. But for the most part, as far as being a receiver, I think they're comfortable with him being that 3rd guy. So when he comes off the suspension, I definitely think he's still there.
Yeah, I think the suspension actually helps him a little bit. It kind of gives the team 4 games to look at some other options, and if nobody steps up there, then there's going to be a spot waiting for him when he gets back. He's been getting open every single day in practice. The problem is that every single day there's been at least one drop on a pass that's right in his hands. And, I mean, John Morton's getting to a point where he's starting to get pissed off at him. So I think for now his spot is safe, but we'll see what some of these other guys do. Next up, that is Ramar Morris, who we just talked about. What do you think of Ramar Morris's chances?
I'm not too sure about Ramon Morris. Initially I don't think he actually makes the roster. He might be a practice squad guy, but from what I've seen so far, he's just kind of trending toward that practice squad type of guy at this moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree, man. He's a guy that has all the potential, but I think if they saw that, they probably would have played him a little bit more on Saturday. If he's out there against the Giants, I think there'd be a little bit more hope that maybe they're still considering him for that return job. Like you said, Lucky Whitehead's out. They need somebody explosive back there, so I'd like to see him take that. Next up, Sharon Peak. Thoughts on him?
I think Sharon is actually on the bubble, and might be leaning towards being cut. Like I just talked about, his reps and everything have gone down drastically. It looks like they're looking at some of the other guys actually put in that spot. I don't think he makes it out of camp this year.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Peak's going to be interesting, man. He's a big body. He's got a lot of speed, but very raw. Another guy who's had trouble holding onto the football. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. And then lastly, we have Chandler Catanzaro. Is he going to win the job, or does Ross Martin have it?
I think Martin is going to get it. Catanzaro, I think, is not saying that he's kick bad, but I just think Martin is actually the guy that actually has been a little more consistent than Catanzaro. So I don't think Catanzaro
if you won't say it, I'll say it. Catanzaro's looked terrible every practice. Terrible. So I'm totally ready to start the Ross Martin era here in the year. So.
I was almost pretty sure, even after last week's game, that Martin was going to be the guy.
All right, so last topic before we open it up to any more questions. Jets-Giants, Saturday night. It's unfortunate that it looks like Odell Beckham and Brandon Marshall probably won't be out there because I thought that would have been a nice test for the young secondary. But what are you looking to see from this game? How do you expect the quarterback reps to be divvied up? What are you looking for?
It's probably going to go just like how we talked about a little earlier. I fully expect Hack to start and Petty to be the backup. I'm pretty sure Hack is probably going to get at least the first half, if not the first 3 quarters. And I'm just looking for him to improve, greatly on what, he did last week. I don't want to see, bad offensive line adjustments. I don't want to see him dumping the ball down every pass play. Look for him to get the ball down the field because, you can't really evaluate a whole lot of other guys without the quarterback throwing the ball down the field. So, but on the defensive side of the ball, hopefully the way they've been looking so far through camp, they keep up the pressure that they've actually been putting on opposing quarterbacks and go out there and play well. It's just going to be more tests for the DBs. But like you said, Marshall and Odell out, that would have been a great test for all the young DBs back there. The speed that the Giants actually had on the outside. I was actually looking forward to see how the safeties adjust to the Giants' speed at wide receiver. But, hopefully some of the other guys step up in there and start making plays. But that's pretty much what I'm going to be looking for against the Giants.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, based off what Petty showed last week, I feel like at this point you kind of have to at least give him some opportunity with the starters, even if it's just, for a couple series in the third quarter and the second half. I think he's going to get that opportunity this week, and I hope he shines, man. Whether it's Hacker, whether it's Petty, I just hope to see one of these guys light it up this Saturday. A few other guys. Jamal Adams, first off. A couple missed tackles already. People are criticizing him. Let's stop with all that nonsense. I think him and May are going to be fine back there. I still want to see a nice little bounce back game from him. Up front, this is the first week in practice that we've seen a lot of Mo, Leo, and Sheldon in a 3-4 look. So hopefully we'll see that in a game. I'd love to see Bowles find a way to get those 3 guys on the field at the same time. A few looks they've had I think it was Donahue and Stanford coming off the edge on the outside, bringing some speed. So I think that could be fun to watch. And just in general, man, I'm excited to watch this defense. I think we kind of know what to expect from the offense at this point. Whoever wins the job, It's not going to be, with the same swear in that Super Bowl year. It's going to be a bad offense. But I think this defense is definitely going to show you some things. So you got to see it Saturday night.
Actually, another thing I'm actually looking forward to is the fact what the offensive line can do, because we all know the Giants' defensive front is very good. So I'm interested to see what the offensive line. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the offensive line can do against the Giants' defensive front.
All right, we're going to open it up for some questions and comments now. Our first one comes from Frank Chris Giblin. He says, we need to throw Hack out there and see what sticks. Time to take off the training wheels. How do you feel about that, Rob?
I agree. Going into the third preseason game, this is usually the game where there's a little bit of game planning going into it. So you get a little bit of what really is going to go on during the regular season for this week. So if they're putting him out there with the first team right now in practice, that's the way it's trending. So I actually really just hopefully they go out there and actually open up the offense a little bit and trend it towards what it would look like during the regular season and actually see what he does. So if he can handle the situation against the Giants and a real game plan, game format, that bodes well for him. If he can't, it's going to show real quick.
All right, next up, we have Jose Colon. How come we continue looking for a quarterback? Let's just start getting offensive linemen already. It doesn't matter who's the quarterback. Rob, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it does matter who's the quarterback. It matters a whole lot.
It might matter a little bit.
With the offensive line, that's a cohesive unit that needs to be solidified. But with this being a young unit, you're always going to need a quarterback. And regardless of how many years the Jets have actually been trying to find one, they're trying to find one now. So they got to try to find one of these guys to see if one of these guys actually can go out there and take the job and continue to progress. But and if they don't, Jets will still be in the market for a quarterback next year. So we'll see what happens.
Questions and comments are coming in furious now. Kenbrell, I still hate him for that choke in 2015. And I was there to see it too. It was a nightmare.
Hey. What can you say?
Though he might actually make the team as a veteran wideout. They don't have too many of those. He might actually be on this roster. I hate to say it.
It could very well be possible, man. Because he's been here. Well, he was here, previously, and the regime actually kind of knows what he's about, forsaking that one play a few years ago. But like everybody, we're ready to be choking him out about. But he's got actually he's a vet now, so and the players and everybody that's here in the organization knows what he's about. So you're right. He might be one of those guys that actually, be late to the squad, but be one of those guys that sticks.
All right. What are your thoughts on Denard Wilson as the Jets secondary coach? With such a young, deep defensive backfield with so much potential, do you think the DBs and Wilson can have good chemistry?
I do. When you have a young coach, coaching young players, they always want to get better. So I'm pretty sure he's pushing these guys to the max every day, making sure that they, study hard, get everything done possible that they could possibly get done. But, it's never a bad thing when you actually have a young, hungry coach actually coaching young, hungry players. So, that always is a thing where they can end up growing together. And usually good things come out from that all the time.
And the thing that I really like about not just Wilson, but a lot of the assistant coaches that they brought in this offseason, whether it's Kevin Green, John Morton, these guys are very fiery, very vocal, something that we know Todd Bowles isn't. And I think it's important to have that in your coaching staff, especially if it's not going to come from the top.
And, Todd Bowles is not a guy that's actually going to be out there, like you said, screaming at everybody. But, for the most part, the guys actually spend 99% of the time with their position coach anyway. So, like I said, when you have young, hungry position coaches coaching young, hungry players, it's always a good thing.
All right, next up, we have our good friend, Edward Delgado. Aside from the safeties, which rookies have been most impressive in practice? I'll start off with that one. As of the past week, are Darius Stewart and Chad Hansen. Both those guys have finally been stepping up. Some people were upset with their first few weeks. They hadn't really shown a lot. They weren't getting a whole lot of team reps. both finally look healthy now. They're moving well. They're catching the football. Aside from one series today where John Morton threw him out for not knowing where to line up on a red zone drill, they've been doing pretty well. But you kind of have to expect some of those things with your rookies. So, Rob, who's kind of stood out for you?
Linebackers. Those guys actually have stood out to me. And I think that actually a lot of that has to do with Kevin Green being a coach. You know, got a Hall of Fame Hall of Fame player coaching young guys. Like I said, you know, you got a hungry coach with a lot of hungry young players. It always bodes well. But you know, the young linebackers, Donnie, you know, those guys, man, they've stood out a lot to me already.
All right. We got 2 more questions here. Our next one comes from our good buddy Justin. Would you consider cutting Steve McClendon? Thoughts on that one?
Honestly, never even thought about it. I wouldn't think about cutting him. He's a good vet to have. He knows the system. You know, he's a plug-in guy. You can plug him in and play. So, me personally, no, I wouldn't think about cutting McClendon at all. Not right now.
Yeah, when preseason started, I thought it was a possibility just because he's making $3.3 million. Maybe you want to use some of that money elsewhere. But at this point, you got $21 million that you have available to spend. So if they needed the cap space, they probably would have moved on from him already. He's a leader on that defensive line. I don't see him going anywhere. I think he's going to be that anchor in the 3-4, primarily in the base defense against the run. So, yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. The only reason why they might consider it is if they really like what they see from Deion Simon and they think he's ready for more playing time, or even guys like Claude Cologne and Lawrence Thomas who've looked all right. So, I mean, I think that would be the only way that he's not on this roster. That's
the reason why I said not right now. You know, 4 or 5 games into the season, if Simon comes on to be that plug and play guy right now, it's a possibility. But right now, I don't think McClendon has any worries about being cut.
All right, and our last question comes from TC Jersey. Should Brandon Shell start at right tackle?
Good question, but I do think so. You know, with the offensive line, it's a tough unit to actually, look at the moment. But for the most part, the way he ended last season on such a positive note, you know, I was looking forward to him carrying that over into this season, and I would just hope that right now that actually he would get the chance to actually do it, because with him, you know, ending the season the way he did last year, he knows what it takes, and he was out there. So hopefully he would have took that grooming that he had, you know, last few games of the season and brought it towards this year, and moved on and got better. But at this moment, I probably would start him just based on, you know, the way he actually played the end of last year.
Yeah, I know Ed's not able to defend Brent Cavalli. He's a big fan of his. And, you know, Cavalli's looked pretty good, but I think Shell's just a little bit more athletic and looked a little bit better so far. Plus, like you said, he's had some regular season games where he's produced. He hasn't allowed any pressure. And the fact that McCagnon traded up for him, I think shows that they really like him. So I think he's probably going to be your starting right tackle. Yeah. All right. And that's going to do it for us. Rob, awesome show. Tons of information coming from Florham Park this week. Hopefully we'll see some good things on Saturday. Thank you to everybody that tuned in, that downloaded the app. Shindig, Robbie, thanks for coming on. Thank you to everyone that submitted questions. We definitely appreciate all the listens. A reminder once again, FanDuel. Go on FanDuel, promo code NYJF. Be a part of our league. I am dying to take your money. All right, have a chance to compete against Rob and all of us here at Jets Fan Media. We're going to have an awesome league with great prizes and giveaways and autographs. So definitely sign up and be a part of that. See you guys again next week.
See you next week.